Ambassador Zixthil had seen many worlds in her 300 years of service to the Galactic Concordance. She had walked on planets made of crystal. She had swum through the living oceans of Veth Prime. She had stood in the courts of species, so old that they remembered the birth of stars. Nothing had prepared her for Earth. The human colony world of New Geneva was pleasant enough. The air was clean. The buildings were simple but well made. The humans themselves seemed unremarkable at first glance. They were soft creatures, without claws or scales or natural armor. Their eyes were small. Their teeth were blunt. By any measure of the concordance, they should have been prey animals. Zixthil arrived with her delegation to formalize Earth's membership in the galactic community. It was supposed to be a simple mission. The humans had only achieved faster than light travel 50 years ago. They were young, eager, and easy to understand. At least that is what the reports said. The welcome banquet was held in a great hall with tall windows. Zixthil noticed that humans liked windows. They seemed to enjoy looking at their sky, even though their sun was a deadly thing that could burn their skin and give them cancer. She made a note of this strange behavior. The food was acceptable. The speeches were boring. Zixthil was thinking about the trade agreements she would sign tomorrow when she heard the splash. A small human had fallen into the decorative fountain at the center of the hall. The child had been running and playing as young creatures do and had slipped on the wet stones. Now the small body was under the water, arms moving weakly. Zixthil froze. Her species did not have the instinct to help others in danger. It was not how they had evolved. They watched and waited to see what would happen. 3 humans moved before she could blink. One was Admiral Chun, the highest-ranking military officer on the planet. He was wearing his formal uniform covered in medals. He dove into the water without a moment of thought. The second was Ambassador Reyes, who was 8 months pregnant with her first child. She jumped in from the other side. The third was Dr. Okonkwo, an elderly scientist who was nearly 90 years old. He went in headfirst. They pulled the child out in seconds. The small body was not moving. Zixthil assumed the creature was dead. Then Admiral Chun pressed his mouth to the child's mouth and began to breathe into it. Ambassador Reyes pushed down on the small chest with her hands. They were forcing air and blood through the body. They were trying to restart life itself through physical force. Zixthil watched in horror. This was not medicine. This was violence against death. The child coughed. Water came out of its mouth. It began to cry. The humans around the fountain started to cheer. Zixthil looked at her delegation. Every single one of them had turned pale. The concordance delegate from the Veth Collective was shaking so hard his translator unit was making static. Dr. Okonkwo was helped out of the fountain. He was smiling despite being soaking wet. Ambassador Reyes was laughing even as her staff wrapped her in warm blankets. Admiral Chun handed the crying child to its mother and then calmly asked a server for a towel. That night, Zixthil wrote her first report on humanity. It was only 3 lines long. They do not accept death. They will fight it with their bare hands. We have made a terrible mistake letting them into the stars. The next morning, she asked to see human medical records. She learned about organ transplants, where humans cut healthy organs from one body and put them into another. She learned about cancer treatments, where they poisoned their entire bodies just to kill a few bad cells. She learned about their history of plagues, where millions died, but millions more survived through sheer stubborn will. She also learned that the thing they did to the child was called CPR. It stood for cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Every adult human was taught how to do it. They considered it a basic skill, like reading or cooking. The concordance had existed for 10,000 years. They had never imagined a species that would teach all its members how to fight death. The very idea was insane. But Zixtho was beginning to understand something important. The humans were not remarkable despite being soft and weak. They were remarkable because they were soft and weak. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, and they had survived by refusing to give up, ever. She signed the trade agreements as planned. But she also sent a private message to the Concordance Council. "Watch the humans carefully," she wrote. "They are not what they seem. They are something far more dangerous than we ever expected." The council received her message and filed it away. They would not understand its importance for another 6 months. Not until the Cathori Swarm came. The Cathori Swarm had been the terror of the Outer Rim for 2,000 years. They were not truly intelligent in the way the Concordance measured such things. They did not build cities or write poetry or dream of the future. They were a force of nature, like a wildfire or a flood. Every 30 years, the swarm would wake from its hibernation and consume everything in its path. They would strip a planet of all life, convert the biomass into more swarm, and then move on to the next world. No one had ever stopped them. The best anyone could do was run. The border world of Kestrel 4 was the first human colony in their path. Zixtho received the news with resignation. The Concordance had protocols for this situation. They would evacuate as many people as possible and then abandon the planet. It was sad, but it was how things worked. The swarm was too large and too fast to fight. The human ambassador did not agree that we are not leaving. Ambassador Reyes said. Her child had been born 2 weeks earlier. She held the baby in her arms as she spoke to the Concordance Council. "We have 40,000 people on that planet. We will not abandon them." The council explained that fighting the swarm was impossible. They had tried it before. Whole fleets had been consumed. The mathematics were clear. Resistance was death. "Then we will die," Reyes said simply. "But we will not run." General Marcus Webb arrived at Kestrel 4 3 days later with a force of 12,000 volunteers. They called themselves the Last Line. None of them expected to survive. Zixtho watched the battlefields from the safety of her ship in high orbit. She expected to see a massacre. Instead, she saw something that changed everything she believed about war. The humans did not fight, like any species she had ever studied. They did not hold defensive positions. They did not form organized lines. They attacked in small groups, striking fast and then disappearing. They set traps and ambush. They used the terrain like a weapon, but that was not the strange part. The strange part was that they would not stop. A human soldier would fight until his weapon ran out of power. Then he would pick up a rock and keep fighting. When his arm broke, he would fight with the other arm. When his legs were crushed, he would drag himself forward with his hands. Zixtho watched one soldier named Private Sarah Kim hold a mountain pass alone for 3 hours. The swarm sent wave after wave against her position. She killed them until her rifle melted from overuse. Then she killed them with a knife. When the knife broke, she killed them with her bare hands. She died eventually. Everyone dies eventually. But she had held the pass long enough for the civilians behind her to escape to the evacuation ships. The Concordance analysts could not understand what they were seeing. They ran the numbers again and again. The humans should have collapsed after the first 6 hours. Any reasonable species would have recognized that the battle was lost and surrendered to save whatever lives they could. The humans fought for 72 hours straight. They rotated in shifts. But those shifts were only for rest, not for retreat. A soldier would sleep for 2 hours and then go back to the line. When the medical stations were overwhelmed, soldiers with training that would have made them doctors on other worlds went back to fighting instead of healing. General Webb himself was wounded twice and refused evacuation both times. The second wound should have killed him. A piece of swarm claw had pierced his lung. He sealed the wound with chemical foam, took a stimulant injection, and led a counterattack that pushed the swarm back 3 kilometers. On the third day, something unprecedented happened. The swarm paused. No one had ever seen the swarm pause before. They were a mindless hunger. They did not think. They did not strategize. They consumed, but something about the humans had confused them. Perhaps it was the simple fact that the humans kept coming no matter what the swarm did. Perhaps there was some spark of primitive intelligence that recognized a predator more stubborn than itself. Whatever the reason, the pause gave the human fleet enough time to arrive. Admiral Chun had brought every ship that could fly. Most of them were civilian transports that had been equipped with weapons in shipyards that worked around the clock. The human engineers had not slept in 4 days. The battle in orbit was brutal and fast. The human ships took terrible losses, but they fought with the same impossible persistence as the soldiers on the ground. By the end of the 5th day, the swarm was broken, not defeated. The swarm could not truly be defeated, but they had lost so much biomass that they retreated to hibernate early. The analysts predicted it would take them at least 50 years to recover enough to threaten another world. 40,000 human civilians escaped from Kestrel 4. 8,000 soldiers died holding the line. Zixtel attended the memorial service on New Geneva. She watched the families cry. She watched the survivors embrace each other. She watched a species that had just lost 8,000 of its people celebrate a victory. She asked General Webb how they had done it. How had they fought for so long without breaking? Webb was quiet for a long moment. He had a new scar on his face from the battle. His hand still shook from the stimulant withdrawal. "We do not leave people behind," he said finally. "That is the rule. Everyone matters. Everyone is worth fighting for. And we will keep fighting until we cannot fight anymore." Zixtel looked at the list of names carved into the memorial wall. 8,000 names. 8,000 people who had died so that others could live. She finally understood what made humans dangerous. It was not their weapons. It was not their ships. It was not their technology. It was the simple fact that they cared about each other more than they feared death. And there was no defense against that kind of love. Dr. Venix had studied biology for 200 years. She had cataloged over 10,000 species across 300 worlds. She had seen creatures that could survive in vacuum. She had documented life forms that lived in the hearts of stars. Nothing in her experience had prepared her for Earth. The research team arrived on the human homeworld 6 months after the Battle of Kestrel 4. The Concordance Council had finally approved a full scientific study of the species that had defeated the Cathari swarm. They wanted to understand how such a weak-looking species could be so dangerous. Dr. Venix expected to find advanced technology, hidden weapons, secret genetic modifications, something to explain the impossible things she had seen in the battle records. Instead, she found a planet that was trying to kill everything on it. The primary light source is a massive nuclear fusion reactor, she wrote in her first report. It emits radiation across multiple spectrums. Prolonged exposure causes cellular damage, premature aging, and cancer. The humans call it the sun. They worship it. She could not understand why any species would evolve under such conditions. The Concordance had strict standards for habitable worlds. Earth failed almost all of them. The gravity was too high. The atmosphere contained a corrosive gas called oxygen. The climate varied wildly from frozen wastelands to boiling deserts. The planet was covered in water that the humans could not breathe, but insisted on playing in anyway. And then there were the other life forms. Earth was filled with predators. Large cats that could crush bones with their jaws. Bears that stood 3 meters tall. Sharks that could smell blood from kilometers away. Venomous snakes and spiders and insects. The humans had not eliminated these threats. They had not retreated to safe zones. Instead, they had done something that made Dr. Venix question her own sanity. They kept the predators as pets. Dr. Venix visited a human home where a creature called a dog lived. The dog was a descendant of wolves, pack hunters that had once competed with humans for food. Its teeth were designed to tear flesh. Its claws could rip through skin. The human child was sleeping on top of it. "She is such a good girl," the human mother said, scratching the predator behind its ears. The wolf creature wagged its tail happily. Dr. Venix documented everything. She visited hospitals and watched humans perform surgery on each other. They cut open bodies, removed organs, and replaced them with organs from other humans or even from animals. The patients were grateful for this violence. She studied human food and discovered that they deliberately consumed a chemical called capsaicin. This chemical was a defense mechanism created by plants to stop animals from eating them. It caused intense pain and burning sensations. The humans ate it for pleasure. They called it spicy food. They had competitions to see who could eat the most painful varieties. She learned about vaccines. Humans would take a disease, weaken it, and then inject it into their bodies on purpose. This trained their immune systems to fight the real disease. They had used this technique to eliminate illnesses that had once killed millions. The concept was elegant in a horrifying way. They were using the weapons of their enemies against them. But the thing that finally broke Dr. Venix was transportation. She asked a human how they had traveled before they developed technology for flying. The human explained about horses, which were large prey animals that humans had somehow convinced to carry them. Before that, humans had walked everywhere. They could walk for days without stopping. They would literally chase animals until the animals died from exhaustion. And after technology? Dr. Venix asked. The human smiled. "We strapped ourselves to controlled explosions," he said. "We call them rockets." Dr. Venix requested clarification. Surely he did not mean actual explosions. The human showed her footage of early human space travel. Metal tubes filled with extremely flammable chemicals, with humans sitting on top, being launched into the sky at tremendous speed. The humans who did this were called astronauts. They were considered heroes. Dr. Venix had to stop her research for 3 days after that. Her medical team diagnosed her with acute stress syndrome. The humans called it a nervous breakdown. When she recovered enough to continue, she learned one more thing that completed her understanding. Humans donated blood. They let other humans stick needles into their veins and drain out their life fluid. They did this voluntarily. They did this for strangers. Some humans donated kidneys. They had 2 kidneys, and they could survive with 1. So they would give the extra kidney to someone who needed it. They would let doctors cut them open and remove an organ so that a stranger could live. Why? Dr. Venix asked the human who explained this to her. Why would you let someone hurt you to help someone you do not know? The human thought about it for a moment. Because they need help, he said simply. And I can help. So I should. Dr. Venix submitted her final report to the Concordance Council. It was 400 pages long, but the summary was only 3 sentences. Humans evolved on a death world. They survived by being more stubborn than anything that tried to kill them. They have turned suffering into strength and pain into power. She recommended that the Concordance never make enemies of humanity, because a species that could survive Earth could survive anything. And a species that would give pieces of themselves to help strangers would fight even harder for people they loved. The Council upgraded humanity's threat assessment to the highest possible level. But Dr. Venix knew that the word threat was wrong. Humans were not a threat. They were something far more terrifying. They were friends. The Concordance vessel Eternal Wisdom was 3 days into its diplomatic mission when the engine failed. The ship drifted in a region of space that was claimed by 3 different pirate factions and 1 hostile empire. A distress signal was sent, but the nearest Concordance rescue ship was 8 weeks away. Captain Trexel did not expect to survive. He gathered his crew of 42 and explained the situation honestly. They had enough food for 3 weeks. Their weapons were minimal. Their shields could not withstand a serious attack. A human merchant ship answered their distress call within 6 hours. Captain Maria Santos of the free trader Lucky Star offered to take the Concordance crew aboard while her engineers tried to repair the Eternal Wisdom. It would take approximately 6 weeks. The Lucky Star was not large. The quarters would be cramped, but it was better than dying. Trexel accepted the offer. He expected 6 weeks of tense coexistence with an alien species. He expected conflicts over resources. He expected the humans to eventually abandon them when the situation became too dangerous. He was completely wrong about everything. The humans adopted them. It started on the first day, when the Lucky Star's cook, a large man named Diego, learned that the Concordance crew could not eat human food without getting sick. Diego spent the entire night researching Concordance dietary requirements. By breakfast, he had created 3 different dishes that were safe for them to eat. "You are guests on my ship," Diego said when Trexel tried to thank him. "Guests do not go hungry." The crew of the Lucky Star had 15 humans. Within 3 days, every single one of them had given the Concordance crew members nicknames. Trexel became Terry. His second-in-command, Vexala, became Vicky. The youngest crew member, a small being named Piptil, became Pip. The humans remembered every name. They learned every preference. They noticed when someone was sad or tired or scared. First Officer Rodriguez organized entertainment nights. She had discovered that the Concordance enjoyed music, so she taught them human songs. The crew of the Eternal Wisdom learned to sing sea shanties and pop ballads and something called karaoke. Chief Engineer Park worked around the clock on the damaged engine. He had never seen Concordance technology before. He studied it like it was the most fascinating puzzle in the universe. Every small victory in the repairs was celebrated with the entire crew. Trexel asked Captain Santos why her crew was working so hard to help strangers. The repair job was not their responsibility. They were receiving no payment. They were putting themselves in danger by staying in hostile space. Santos looked at him like the question did not make sense. "You needed help," she said. "We could help. What else would we do?" Trexel had no answer. The pirates attacked on the 4th week. 3 ships came out of nowhere. They demanded that the Lucky Star surrender the Concordance crew for ransom. The merchant ship had minimal weapons. The mathematics were clear. Surrender was the only logical choice. Captain Santos did not surrender. She maneuvered the Lucky Star between the pirates and the damaged Eternal Wisdom. Her crew scrambled to defensive positions. Diego left his kitchen and took up a weapon. Engineer Park sealed himself in the engine room to keep the systems running, no matter what. "Why are you doing this?" Trexel asked over the communication system. "You barely know us. We are not worth dying for." Santos laughed. It was a strange sound, full of warmth and determination. "You are crew now," she said. "We do not abandon crew." The battle was short and brutal. The Lucky Star took heavy damage. 3 human crew members were injured. The ship's cargo hold was breached. Then Captain Santos did something insane. She aimed her ship directly at the largest pirate vessel and accelerated to full speed. The pirates tried to dodge, but Santos was a better pilot. She clipped their engine array and sent them spinning into their own allies. The pirates retreated. The cost was high. The Lucky Star was barely functional. Captain Santos had broken 4 ribs when her console exploded, but the Concordance crew was safe. Trexel sat beside Santos in the medical bay while the ship's doctor treated her wounds. He still could not understand what had happened. He asked her again why she had risked everything. Santos looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were tired but kind. You know, she said, when I was a kid, I was in a bad situation. Alone, scared, no one to help me. Then this old woman I had never met before took me in, fed me, gave me a place to sleep, protected me. I asked her why she was helping a stranger. Do you know what she said? Trexel shook his head. She said that everyone needs someone to believe in them. That kindness does not run out when you share it. That the world gets better one person at a time. Santos smiled through the pain. I figured the universe works the same way. The rescue ship arrived 2 weeks later. The Eternal Wisdom was repaired enough to limp home. The crew of the Lucky Star threw a farewell party that lasted all night. Trexel hugged Captain Santos before he left. It was a human gesture. He had learned it from Diego. When he returned to the Concordance, Trexel submitted his report. It confirmed what Dr. Venix had written months earlier. Humans form attachments quickly and absolutely, he wrote. Once they decide you belong to them, they will sacrifice anything to protect you. This is not weakness. This is their greatest strength. The Concordance Council reviewed all the reports on humanity. The ambassador's warning about their refusal to accept death. The military analysis of their impossible persistence. The scientific study of their deadly homeworld. The cultural observation of their fierce loyalty. They made a decision that had never been made before in 10,000 years of galactic history. They classified humanity as Category 1, not a threat, not an asset, not a potential ally. They classified them as family because the Council had finally understood the truth about humans. They were terrifying, yes. They were stubborn and strange and capable of surviving anything. But that was not what made them special. What made humans special was that once they loved you, they would move stars to keep you safe. And there was nothing more powerful in the universe than that.